Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. Before we dive into this powerful episode, please remember to subscribe to our channels and to give us a 5-star rating on iTunes to continue hustling. This episode is sponsored by Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, Sherman College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, the Influencer Authority Podcast Training, Mango Voice, Life Chiropractic College West, and M-Sculpt. Let's hustle.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 468 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. I'm your producer, Luke Millette, and here's your host, James Chester.
So today we had the opportunity of interviewing Dr. Patrick Lowe. And if you want to hear about how chiropractic is the miracle and his new book, Finding the Extraordinary Practice, stay tuned. Welcome back. This is another episode of the Chiro Hustle podcast. Today we have Patrick Lowe coming in. I'm really excited for this episode. We're going to be talking about his new book. I'm really thankful for his ability to just go ahead and show the book before we jump in. Let's see it. Oh, there we go. Finding the Extraordinary Practice. So Patrick Lowe just finished this book. I have 2 copies sitting at home. I'm really thankful to be a part of this project with you, Patrick. Before we get into this episode, though, I always let people know the big why behind what we do over here at Chiro Hustle. First of all, we protect freedom of speech with this show. We protect medical freedom, family freedom, because I believe those things are really important. We've evolved since our inception as a show, and I started to find out what our real value add was, and that was telling the truth about this beautiful profession. So with that, we do support subluxation-based chiropractic. We think that is on the forefront that people need to know. We also protect B.J. Palmer Sacred Trust. If you don't know what that means, go to your favorite search engine right now and search for B.J. Palmer's Sacred Trust. And those were his last words. And that's a big part of why we do what we do over here at Chiro Hustles, to just really be a cornerstone for the knowledge base of this profession and to educate people. And then lastly, we also believe in innate intelligence and universal intelligence. We believe when man or woman, the physical, get adjusted, it connects them to man or woman, the spiritual. And with that being said, Dr. Patrick Lowe, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I had a chance to meet you at a Life Vision event down in Marietta, Georgia, right outside of Atlanta. We were down there in the same weekend, and we had dinner together with some friends, and I was just really enthused about what you were doing. And I asked you about your project and asked if I could be a part of your book, and everything lined up. Sometimes serendipity steps in.
I think God directs our place and our conversations a lot. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to meet you and talk about what we're doing.
Yeah, so chiropractic's really important. I think that we can't overshadow the fact that you're a chiropractor and you're enthusiastic about helping the future of chiropractic rise up. So maybe before we get into the story of what you're doing currently, but how did you actually get into becoming a chiropractor? What's your chiropractic story?
So it's interesting because I was the sick kid. I had histoplasmosis, was in the hospital, had open thoracic surgery, had several surgeries. And my parents went to chiropractor, but they never took me because I was a sick kid. So it was kind of interesting. But I went to my undergraduate, was working through a bachelor's in bioscience pre-med, got a bachelor's in psychology. And I spent some time with some of the providers in the area, and they weren't the happy people that I thought they should be. They weren't the healthy people I thought they should be. And somebody introduced me to a chiropractor. And I drove 3.5 hours across the state to meet my mom and dad's chiropractor. And he was a really neat guy, and he explained everything to me. He took me down, did the whole new patient class, explained the spine, explained how the brain and body are connected and how everything works together. And this is how God intended us for us to be. I'm like, and he worked 5 days a week. He wasn't in the hospital at midnight. He was on his first marriage. It wasn't his third, fourth, or fifth because he was working so much. It was interesting because the lifestyle that I wanted for health, for a family life, for different aspects of my life, were all there in chiropractic.
Yeah, that's great. I find that a lot in our show is like people start out and they don't, I tell people all the time, people, number one, they don't know where to go or who to trust for their health.
Right.
And then, being a chiropractor, how many years have you been as a doc?
I graduated in 97. So this is my 25th year since graduation.
So 25 years. And early on when you first started being a patient, your family didn't know where to go, who to trust. And,
right.
Sometimes we just, we drive the distance in order to find the people that can help us.
Yeah.
So based on that, let's talk a little business strategy. Like from like your perspective, what have been some of the most important things that you've done to grow your practice over the past 25 years?
So I had it all figured out when I graduated. I was going to open my practice. I had it all figured out, knew what I needed to do. I was open for about 2 months, was seeing 7 patients a week when my parents were in town, which made up 2 of them. And I realized that I didn't know anything about running the business of chiropractic. I didn't know how to manage people. I didn't know how to find people to hire. I didn't know how to get new patients. There's a lot of stuff I didn't know that I didn't know. But my bandwidth was taken up completely with trying to treat the patients I had. There wasn't a whole lot of margin for learning how to run a business on top of that. So trying to build a business and start from scratch, it's really hard. So I ended up getting a coach, much to my wife's chagrin. I signed up for a coach that we couldn't afford. And I actually looked at it after we signed the agreement and I said, now, let me tell you something. I have no money. And so if this doesn't work, I can't pay you. So, and he said, you'll work it out. And we did, one step after another, after another. We found somebody to trust. We found somebody with a lot of experience, Dr. Chuck Gibson, back in 98, actually. And I stayed with him for a very long time, learned all the basics of running practice. And man, when I got those seminars, I took notes like there's nobody's business.
Yeah, I've had a pleasure of having lunch with Chuck and having him on the show and speaking to him at length on the phone. And you lucked out.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
Super neat guy.
I think he's just turned 88 or 89.
Yeah.
And I think it's really it's awesome that you had such a great leader early on in your career.
It is, and I you're right. I lucked into him because they come to town, done a talk, and I went to the talk, and it just like I said, God directs our steps, and sometimes we make bad decisions with that, but I think I was in the right place at the right time.
So somewhere along the steps of your career, you found that it was important to author books. And the first one you did was called Your Success Experience. And the next one was the newest one is Finding the Extraordinary Practice. What have you found were like, why did you decide that it was important to write books on chiropractic?
I've had so many mentors in my life, and some of them are in person. Chuck was one of them. Jay Morgan was another. I've had Noah Lloyd and all these different people that mentored me personally and coached me personally. But there's so many people that coach and mentor through the books they write, and they reach people that can't get to them or over time, things that written by what was Think and Grow Rich. The guy's not alive anymore, but I sure learned a lot from his books. How to Win Friends and Influence People. The guy's not alive anymore, but his books reach me and help me in so many different ways that if I want to reach more people with the messages I have that I feel like I need to tell, books are a great venue to do that, great avenue to just get in front of the right people, help them at the right time, and at least give them a resource to start the thought process.
Yeah, I think, you hit the nail on the head there. I've had the pleasure of reading your second book, but I would recommend anyone that's like starting out with like a new chapter of life is to read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill and How to Win Friends and Influence People by, is that, I can't remember. Dale Carnegie. Yeah, I mean, 10 years ago, I read both those books. And the big takeaway for me was if you give everybody everything they ever wanted, you'll never have to ask for anything. And I think that that's like so true about what you're doing right now is you're given the gift of connection. You're given the gift of knowledge. you're given the gift of what's possible to other people based on your career and allowing people to come in and spend time with you.
Yes, I love it when people come visit. It's so much fun. And you mentioned what's possible. I interviewed a young lady a few years ago. And I said, "So, what do you want to make when you get out and get in practice here in a couple months?" She goes, "I'd like to make, I don't know, after a couple of years, I'd like to be making 50 or 60,000 a year." I'm like, "Honey, you should start there, and you should be able to grow beyond that. It should be possible." But her understanding what somebody told her was possible was just that. And that was her ceiling, because that's all she thought was possible.
So let's talk a little bit about that. Like, maybe you could share with us some of the success strategies or success tips that you would offer to people that are starting out in practice.
Yeah, you have to have a strategic plan. And if you look at Harvard Business School or all these businesses, a strategic plan means you got a vision, you have a mission, you have action steps to support that mission, know when you're making progress in the right direction. And that's one of the things we break down. But if you're looking at joining a practice, or even if you're starting your own, you need to have a vision, mission for the doctors who are going to work with you. You have to know how they play into what you're wanting to build. I've heard so many people over time, they're like, "I need an associate because I need to get out of here." Not really a vision, not really a mission. That's an exit. That's a they're not even looking at delegating. They're looking at abdicating. You know, there's a difference between delegating projects and tasks and jobs, and abdicating, meaning, "Here, it's yours. If you win or lose or fail, it's your problem." And you don't want to do that. You want to be there to support, to mentor, to help the next generation of chiropractors.
I think you nailed it. When I think about like the business of chiropractic, you said it. Historically, it's been really popular for chiropractors to find an associate. And I think that if they want to do that, they should just be clear on their path. Do you want somebody to come in to give you a break? Do you want somebody to come in and take over your legacy? Or do you want somebody to like come in and work beside you? I think if you're clear on that, then whoever you're working with is going to have clarity and be able to move forward with you.
And you'll attract the right people to do that. And that's great. You should attract the person that wants to do what you want to do. But the lack of alignment and synergy between what the clinic owner wants and what the other doctor wants, the lack of alignment is what causes most relationships to fail. We're not clear on what we want or why that person's even there.
Yeah. I mean, today's episode, I think you're giving a lot of really great takeaways for people to be able to realize that if you are going to grow in the chiropractic business, that you have to be very clear on your vision, your mission, and your strategic plan. Let's talk a little bit about how you are paying it forward. How are you helping people? I know you do a lot at Life University, and you help with the chiropractic college down there. And you've been doing a lot with the impact around Life Force.
Yeah, we work with Life Force, which is kind of the recruiting arm of Life, but it's neat because they pay it forward to the doctors who are talking to people about wanting to be a chiropractor. As a doctor, you go down and join me and a bunch of other doctors. You get to hear great speakers talk about functional neurology or talk about whatever. You have interactive games you do with each other. There's just so many different things that they do for you just because you came down. And you join, you kind of get to refill your bucket. So I really love Life Force for that aspect. And so I've invited a bunch of my friends, and they're like, "How do you get our friends to come to Life Force with you?" I'm like, "I'm having fun, and you should come along." And they do it. Sounds like a great approach. "I'm having fun. You should come with me." And they have fun. They come with me, and they get to meet great students who need people, need mentors, need people that will be relationships 5, 10, 15 years from now. And the relationships we have now will hopefully last a long period of time.
I love this approach because I think that everybody needs access to somebody that's been there and done that before. And mentorship is something that, we all have to, sometime in our life, we have to go seek that out, whether it's through a book or through somebody that is, capable of, facilitating their time and efforts towards us. And I think one of the best things about today's episode is you just keep it really clear. Go do things that are meaningful.
Right.
Stay focused. Be available. Teach people. And I think that there's an old saying that I really love is those that do not do anymore teach. And I think that being dual in that you have that duality, you're actually doing and teaching along the process. So you're filling both sides of your career. You're also, working with people that matter and doing projects that matter. And I think a lot of times people just need meaningful things. So I think that what you're doing is really important at life.
One of the things, I have three adult sons, and they all went through Boy Scouts. And one of the things I learned through Boy Scouts was just being around the men who had sons that had already done the stupid things my kids were doing, or things I perceived. I was the only one working through that, the only one who had been there, realizing what your developmental milestones should be. We see it with kids when they're growing up. We're like, by the time they're 3, they should be doing this, this, and this. Same thing with doctors when they graduate. By the time they've been out a year, they should be able to do this, this, and this. It'd be unrealistic to expect them to do this. What I've learned in 25 years, I can't matrix download to people, but they can get a faster orientation if I say, you're exactly where you should be. Or, hey, maybe this is something you want to think about.
You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. This episode is sponsored by Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, Sherman College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, the Influencer Authority Podcast Training, Mango Voice, Life Chiropractic College West, and M-Sculpt. Let's hustle. I think that's really, really, really valuable to anybody that's listening to this episode, either today or in the future. I think everybody should have the ability to be acknowledged, seen, and heard. And it does take time. It takes time for people to develop the skills to, like you said, a little one. It takes time to develop the skills to tie shoes. It takes people the ability to communicate well. And I think the next part of, talking to you today, maybe we can get across what are some tips or strategies that people can do to communicate and to really, nurture the conversation inside of a practice. Because I think that that's what a lot of chiropractors are looking for. Is when I got in, I was like, how do doctors not know how to communicate? It was very odd to me that people had to hire a coach to tell them how to say things. So what are some of the proper questions that people should be asking when working with, whether it's a patient that's been there 10 years or a patient that just showed up for their first visit?
Gosh, that's a great question, because I think one of the great things about the way we do things in our practice is we have open adjusting areas. So I can hear what this doctor says this patient, what this doctor says this patient, what this doctor says this patient. As a third party, I can come in and pull the doctor over later and say, hey, I think it'd be perceived better if you said it like this. And I'm able to, in that time, look at how we're languaging. But paying attention to languaging is real important. But the other side of that, I think, is we get to watching ourselves from the bleachers, and we can't play and watch ourselves at the same time. So we're like, I said this. Should I said that? Oh my gosh, I said that wrong. They're going to be upset with me. And this whole conversation goes back and forth in your head. And you just need to say something, but say it in the effort that it's in that patient's best interest at that time and for the long term. If you just keep what that patient's thinking in mind, say, I want to say it. I want to stop for a minute, think about what I want to say to you. I want to say it in a way that is not coddling. It's not over communicating the great big $50,000 words. But here's what I think you need to know. I care about you. I'm here with you. I want to help you through this process for as long as you want to be here. And I'll be here if you need to leave and come back.
Yeah, I that last thing you said really sets it's kind. And I think a lot of times the messaging is not very kind. Like you have to stick to it 3 days a week. If you don't show up, you're fired almost. And
Right.
I think that it puts a lot of pressure on the person that needs care rather than allows them to understand that you're there to guide them through whatever they're going through. And I think that chiropractic a lot of times becomes super businessy rather than caregiving. And I think
Right.
that if you can like balance both those out, you can actually create a great practice where people don't feel the pressure, but they feel welcomed.
Yeah. And we need to tell them what they need if they want to hear or not to some extent. But, once I say, hey, you need to come 3 times a week for 6 weeks or whatever it is, and they say, I can only do such and such, I'm like, okay, how can I help you? And if we leave it with how can I help you as a servant mindset, everything else will fall in place.
So, is it your ambition to grow a really big, busy practice, or is it to have a more mindful volume practice?
I don't think that there's a dichotomy. I think that, and saying that, I think that we can grow a really big practice with a whole bunch of doctors in one location that one
Mm,
help the doctors because not every doctor wants to run a business. We with the new expansion, we have a goal to have 8 doctors working this facility that can
wow.
have that none of the doctors have to see 300, 400, 500 patients a week to make it work. But we can help doctors. By helping doctors, we can help more people. We help more people, we help more families. And that's what we're trying to build, not 12 overheads. So,
I think that that's really healthy. That encourages me with what you're doing. I think that that comes with a lot of practice, though. How did you come up with the strategy that you're going to get that many practitioners under one roof?
we've had 4 and we had to half the space. And part of our mission is to help doctors. And not everybody wants to run a practice. Not everybody wants to spend the time, money, and energy to do it, or wants to be here like I was my kids will tell you we were here doing billing sometimes in the early years until 9 o'clock at night, and they were taking naps on the adjusting tables. You know, not everybody wants that. So there's so many doctors that they just need a place to thrive. They need a place that they can do really well. They can earn great money. They can have a lot of fun. They get the respect that they deserve as a doctor. And I don't know that I want to cap it at 8. I just may do a different location to help more doctors because every other profession, medically, dentistry, everything else, optometry is consolidating providers because why would we want 8 overheads when we
Hmm.
can have one and help even more people and have the most efficient marketing we can get, have the most efficient billing we can get, have the most efficient everything so the doctors can come in and just be doctors and get
I
paid
love
well.
that so much. I love that so much because I see I've done over 1,100 interviews in 5 years, and I see chiropractors trying to be the adjuster, trying to be the biller, trying to be the front desk, try to be the marketer, try to be, you know. And the main important thing of a chiropractor that makes them, if you were to patent a chiropractor, they have to do 3 things: be unique, distinct, and non-obvious. Well, the only thing that a chiropractor does that's unique, distinct, and non-obvious is the adjustment. No one else can fill that
Right,
gap. So when a
right,
chiropractor is doing everything else but that, they're not doing what their sole genius is. They're stepped
right.
away from what their actual path of what they wanted to go and become a doctor for was. And now they're all, confused with processes and procedures, and they're stuck in like, well, how can I make what's next? What's the next shiny thing that I can put into my practice to make my bills paid? And they're not
Right.
adjusting then. So I think if you can focus specifically on that adjustment, keep the overheads down, actually practice real deal chiropractic where you're checking, detecting, and correcting vertebral subluxations, that's chiropractic thriving.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And
And that's encouraging
it's
to
very
hear.
possible.
It's encouraging to hear. And that's what we need. We need real systems and processes, and we need real training grounds. We need people that are actually out there teaching chiropractic and fortifying a future for chiropractors. And it's really encouraging to hear you share some of the things that you're doing, because I wasn't aware that that was a path you were on, and a path that you're headed towards, and a path that you're actually thriving in is a multi doctor practice. I love that.
Yeah, and it's fun. It's fun watching people step in. I've got one doctor who, I have a couple doctors who are in practice for a long time, and when they've come in and got into a system that worked for them, they made better money, they had more fun, they had time off. Their experience contributed to everybody else's experience with their knowledge and their wisdom and things they've accumulated over the last 15, 20 years, whatever it was. And it's just been a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, there's an old saying that many hands make light work.
Right.
So let's go lightning round. I know we got about 6 minutes left of our show today, but what are your favorite ways to stay connected to your local community?
For the local community, we do several things. We do a helmet day every year, so we give away 500 bicycle helmets to kids. We do a festival in our parking lot for that, in our office, which is so much fun. We do a lot of outreach. We go and our staff all went and bought Christmas presents and handed them to people for a nursing home, and that was out of their stuff. We have an abundance, so we do take care of some people who can't afford care, and we do help with lots of things like that. We go out and do massage days. We just try and stay in front of people and let people know that, one, we're safe, fun, and likable. And we also do a lot of stuff on social media, which just gives back to the community.
I like that a lot. Safe, fun, likable.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important thing for people to understand about chiropractic is the practitioners really do care about their communities. That's really why I focus on that part of our show is building your brand or building your messaging. It all goes from shaking hands, it all goes from showing up. It all goes from, doing the right thing. And I think that if I was ever to have a tier on this show, it would be, I love chiropractors because they're always capable and wanting to do the right thing. And that's a beautiful thing about chiropractic is it is a give, love, serve profession. And I think a lot of the things that you're talking about are essential for a brighter future for chiropractic. So let me ask you, where do you see the profession going, and how can we contribute to a better future for chiropractic?
I see that we're going to have even more successful chiropractors in the future. We're going to have more people reaching out and mentoring and knowing where to go to get mentoring. And once we do that, we're going to continue to grow. I see a certain arm, which is half medical doctor, half chiropractor, that's just going to continue to wither. And the good news is the ones that are growing and staying will keep adding to the numbers. When you add somebody and they wither, you add somebody, they wither, you add somebody, they wither, that doesn't. So I think we have a really bright future for chiropractic, and we just got to keep on doing what you're doing, reaching out, telling people, telling a story, and staying principled with who we are, what we do, and why we do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I always tell people on our show that I believe you should have two doctors in your life, one to keep you healthy and one to save you from dying. And I think there is a good place for a medical doctor to keep people from dying because they're actually really trained in triage and saving lives. And chiropractors are always also trained in saving lives. It's just different because you keep the nervous system functioning and unsubluxated and working the way it's supposed to, as God intended. Just free of subluxation. I think that if people knew how detrimental it was to their positivity of their health and their well-being and their family's health and well-being to be subluxated, everybody'd be lined up for miles and miles and miles looking for their chiropractor to change this thing in their body called subluxation and correct that. So I think it's really important that we make that distinction too, that, the allopathy model is different than the chiropractic vitality model. And when people understand vitalism, chiropractic is a cornerstone to healthy families.
Absolutely.
So Chuck Gibson, you said it was your first coach. I guess this question is more important. Maybe it can encompass Chuck, but Who are some of your chiropractic heroes? Who are some people that have inspired you to become the practitioner you are today?
Gosh, there's Chuck Gibson, and Jay Morgan was a coach with him, and Noel Lloyd, and excuse me, Sigafus. I listened to Sigafus's tapes. Dana O'Neill was a friend of mine down the road. When I first got in practice, I went and asked him if I could borrow his SAM unit, and he started giving me books, DeMartini, all these books and tapes and stuff that I go back a week or two later. He let me have the book read, and we talk about it. So all these people. Oh gosh, Fred Barge. These are just people that made an impact on chiropractic.
Yeah, I actually met DeMartini. I didn't know he was a chiropractor. I went to one of his breakthrough experiences and went and saw him speak for a couple hours, and I was just blown away. And I think that he's made a profound impact on a lot of people, not just chiropractors. So,
Right.
And I do think that it's important for people to recommend books, but I actually recommend people to, once they get them, to read them. And
That's a key.
and I think that people treat books like a sprint, and they're just not fast. So I think people should just be more mindful of the text that they get, and don't feel like you have to finish it in record time, but absorb the pieces of that book that you should read, highlight it, take pictures, share it with people, actually pick somebody to read a book with, and talk about it as you go through the book. Maybe that's a good suggestion for your book, Find the Extraordinary Practice. Find a partner, read through that book together, and talk about the chapters as you go through it, and topics that happen within the text. So I think that that's really encouraging too.
So smart.
Yeah, I think that it would help a lot of people if they would just share books with each other and actually read them, and actually like go through and have a book partner, not a group of people, just somebody else, a little accountability partner. And then you can have then you have a great relationship with somebody that you read something meaningful.
Yeah.
Miracle stories. I love closing out with miracle stories. And I have one question after the miracle story. So if you could share a miracle story that you've experienced over the past 25 years.
Gosh, there are so many of them. And that's one of the things we have to warn against is overlooking all the miracles. We had a young man, his mom brought him in. She was a patient, and he had ADHD. He had RAD. He had all these different things going on. They're looking for a group home for him. No boarding house would take him. He had all these problems going on, and he was on tons and tons of medication. And so we started adjusting. And after a while, they sent him off to visit somebody else, and the medicine got forgotten. And mom didn't think chiropractic was working, but he came back and they realized he didn't need that medicine anymore. The kid gained 10 pounds in about 3 months after being off all the meds. He got through high school and was considered one of the best in his class, from being the kid that was being kicked out of school in elementary school. I think he's 10. And just watching his life grow as any normal young man does. We have our ups and downs, but just watching, and he's like, I do so much better when I get adjusted. That's a great story. And I love it because it changed the trajectory of his life. I always talk about not just it changed his life, it changed the trajectory of his life from that adjustment. If he got 1, 2, 3, or 5, or 10, his life started going up instead of keeping going down. And we see that with so many patients where it changes that trajectory.
Well, I think that chiropractic is the miracle. That's the story. And that's why we do this show. Last question. I've been working on this one. And I think it's really important to close out with this. If you're the last chiropractor in the world, would the profession survive?
Yes, it would, because I still want to tell a story. I want to help people, and we're going to find more people that want to help people. If you have the greatest message in the world, why wouldn't you tell people? Let's help you learn how to do what we do. Let's go help more people over here. Let's be chiropractic evangelists.
Amen, brother. And if people want to get your book or learn more about you, where can we send them to?
You can go to Amazon's where the book's at. It's just under Finding the Extraordinary Practice. It's got my beautiful picture on it. And it's a blue book with a gold binding. And so you can reach me directly at drlowe@lowechiro.com. And we're currently redoing my website, maybe be done by the time it comes out, patricklowe.com, PATRICKLOWE.com.
Well, Doc, I really appreciate you being my guest today on episode 468. I think we accomplished a lot with our time together, and we've shared a great message of something that's meaningful to both of us, and that's subluxation-based chiropractic, and that's chiropractic business, that's chiropractic lifestyle, and that's the ability to reach more people. So I want you to have a great rest of your day, and if there's anything that you need in the future, just let me know.
James, I appreciate you and the work you're doing with this podcast. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun for me. See, that's just it. I enjoy this. This is like the best thing that I do every week. Is I create a show that features chiropractors and doctors and marketers and people that actually protect the sacred trust and do something to create a greater good in this world, rather than to look at all the bad in the world. And I just like to do something that lifts up this profession rather than looks at all the faults of the world. So I appreciate you sharing your messages today. I appreciate your books. I appreciate your friendship. And I can't wait till I get a chance to share another meal with you.
I can't wait.
All right, Patrick, have a great day, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
All right, bye for now. Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.